Hello, my name's Sherry Forsyth. I'm a bereavement and peak performance coach, and today I'm going to be doing the fourth part of the fourth in a series on how to make sure that as a whole we are balanced and stimulated and challenged. So the previous three were dealing with the mental approach, the physical and the emotional sides, what we can do to make sure they're balanced. Today I'm talking about the spiritual aspect of how we can challenge ourselves spiritually but still remain balanced. So spirituality is a huge concept which we would need months and months to cover. So I'm going to just be touching on a few of the topics. So I want to reassure you though, this is not a religious discussion. I'm not going to be recommending certain religious or spiritual practices at all. What I am going to be doing is I'm going to be speaking about the benefits of having a spirituality in your life, whatever that means to you. In other words, the fact is that you believe in a being or a person or something greater than yourself. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. So I want to start with talking about the difference between religion and spirituality. They're very, very close. But the difference between the two is that religion is generally done by a group. It's quite structured. They're regular meetings. They follow certain beliefs, and there's a structure to their spirituality, if you want to put it like that. They share common beliefs, and that's what pulls them together. Okay, whereas spirituality is much more individual. It's more to do with your soul and you having your relationship with divinity or God or whatever you choose to call it on your own. So it has a lot to do with your inner dialogue, your inner discussions, your inner self, your thoughts. But it can also be music, and you can obviously speak it as well. It's not only that. But a very big part of spirituality is to give meaning and purpose to the world and to yourself as well. So spiritual and religious practices, they help us to integrate the mind, body and spirit, and they also provide psychological and physical benefits. So we're going to chat about those as well as a few more other benefits. And so it's very much like the core part of mind, body, spirit integration. It's like the thing that pulls them all together. I hope that makes sense. Also, just to mention that this is the third time I'm doing this video today. I've been disrupted by, you don't want to know, dogs barking and delivery people arriving and yeah, you name it. So I don't mind what noises happen, what dogs are doing, what barking is happening. I'm going to just carry on because I can't have to do it a fourth time. So in advance, I apologize if there are any disturbances. Okay, as I go through our discussion today on spirituality, I welcome you to provide comments in the comment box below, what you're thinking, questions you may be asking the community, or thoughts that you might be having. So let's start with now a definition of spirituality. It means, it's such a broad thing, but spirituality can mean different things to different people at different times, in different cultures and different countries. So it shows how broad the topic is that we're discussing today. But in the interest of trying to narrow it down a little bit, these are usually core parts of spirituality that I'm going to read out to you. And normally there's a sense of purpose. There's a sense of connectedness to self, to others, to nature, and to God or divinity or whatever that power, whatever you call the power that is. There's a quest for wholeness. There's a search for hope and harmony. There's a belief in a higher being or beings. And at some level, there's transcendence. In other words, the sense that there is more to life than the material and practical things that we experience. And spirituality and religious practices are those that give meaning and value to people's lives. Okay. Underlying many of those themes is the assumption that we are trying to make sense of the world, and we are trying to find our meaning and our place within it, within the world. So in this context, spirituality becomes the vehicle through which that meaning is sought. I hope that makes sense to you. So it's an aspect, spirituality is an aspect of ourselves that gives us our humanness. And so it includes vital dimensions like a quest for meaning, for purpose, self-transcending knowledge, meaningful relationships, love and commitment, as well as some sense of the holy amongst us. So we start at an early stage. We can start at a very early stage practicing our spiritual beliefs. And what it does is it guides us to make decisions that will help us as we go through our normal life. It can help us with moral decisions. It can help us with generally guiding us away from negative, bad decisions and behavior to the more positive for yourself and for others as well. So it helps us with certain lifestyle habits or decisions that we want to be making. Okay, so what kind of spiritual practices are we talking about? It's huge, the number of ways that people practice their spirituality. So I'm just going to give you a few, and if you have any ones that are really good for you, I would love you to add them into the comment box as well. Okay, so the activities or practices of spirituality can include meditation, yoga, fasting, going to church, walking a prayer circle, making a pilgrimage, taking the sacraments, singing in a choir, going on a weekend retreat, listening to the words of inspired speakers, and not only on topics of faith and religion, but on things like maybe racism, something that inspires us deeply. Dancing with a group at a wedding, lighting candles, connecting intimately with your partner, listening to very beautiful music, saying your daily prayers, and contemplating a beautiful sunset or sunrise, maybe from a mountaintop or a very beautiful place. My husband Mike, when he was a little boy, his experience where he just said he felt at one with the world when he walked down to a stream near their home, climbed up into a tree, and just sat there, just being. And for him, it was a very spiritual experience. So I'm sure you've got your own way of practicing your spirituality. So all of these are examples of how we can set time aside from our very busy, everyday rat race and find the time to practice our spirituality. All of these things will serve to reduce our stress levels, which is a fundamental cause of many of the chronic diseases that we have in our society, Western society today. These spiritual practices have a positive, healing, restorative effect, especially if they are built in, which means you do them on a regular basis, daily, weekly, monthly, and there's some rituals that you will experience only annually. If we experience these things regularly, there's a cumulative effect of all the spiritual practices that we have that become very beneficial for us psychologically and health-wise the longer we do them. Okay, French sociologist Émile Durkheim calls this time that we set aside to practice our spirituality sacred time, okay, as opposed to what she calls profane time, which is when we just carry on with our normal everyday life. So sacred time is what we're looking at. So spirituality, how does it affect us socially? Well, usually people who are like-minded will worship or practice their spirituality or their faith together. And because they're like-minded and have similar values, they become quite a solid unit. And should you have any trouble, you find that the people belonging to your group will be very supportive because of the nature of who they are, and that they are guided by principles of support and care and compassion and generosity. So not only can they help and support in a time of trouble, but also they become your friends because you have similar values and similar way of being. Yeah. Sorry, as I said, I apologize for the dogs, but I'm going to just push on through. The next little area that I want to speak about is how spirituality can affect us morally. So whatever faith or spirituality we practice, it's usually a very, very rich source of ethics. In other words, what to do right and what to do wrong. There's a great emphasis being placed on human principles and how we should be behaving, how we should be living our lives. The other thing that I think is really valuable is that it can act as a guide to inhibit negative behaviors that we might be experiencing, because it acts like a beacon. So if we have a decision to make, then what we need to do is look at what our spirituality is saying, and that will guide us to making the better decision. Okay, then as far as the mental and emotional time goes, spirituality can help us. Sorry, I'm very distracted with our dogs who are jumping all over my husband as he is filming this for me. Let's move to the emotional, how spirituality affects us emotionally. When we experience a trauma, spirituality can act as a real rock in our life. It can stabilize and support us. I remember after the loss of our younger daughter, it was really something that helped me immensely, to the point where I can't really understand how people can survive a huge trauma if they don't have some kind of spirituality to help them make sense of what's happening. But I used to pray every day for the grace, the peace, and the strength just for today. I couldn't look further than that. And that little prayer really got me through the first number of very difficult months after the loss of Kerry. So numerous studies also show that spirituality has an effect on recovery from emotional diseases, or should I say, more mental diseases, depression, anxiety, stress, qualitative research has also demonstrated that if you practice meditation and yoga, that also helps you in dealing with those kind of pressures that are very common in today's living. There's emerging literature showing the research between spirituality and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's very interesting. In the 11 studies that have been referred to, they have 3 main findings, which I found very interesting, so I hope you will as well. The first is that they show that religion and spirituality are usually, though not always, beneficial when people are suffering from a trauma. Okay, so usually it helps, but not always. The second thing is that they show that traumatic experiences can lead to a deepening of your faith and spirituality. Okay, and then the third one is that positive religious coping, religious openness, readiness to face existential questions, religious participation, and intrinsic religiousness are associated with improved post-traumatic recovery. Okay, so that is showing us that in tough times, faith and spirituality can really play a huge role. And the reason it does that is that faith can help us reframe and reinterpret or interpret what's happened in a different way that makes more sense and gives it more meaning. In that way, it makes it easier for us to deal with it. One of the central themes of spirituality is having a meaning or purpose in life. And one of the major symptoms, I suppose you could call, of depression is the fact that we actually lose our sense of meaning, we lose who we are, we lose our sense of meaning in our lives. And so often spirituality can help redress that imbalance. As we mentioned at the beginning, spirituality has a lot to do with finding meaning and purpose in life. And for those of you who are really trying very hard to do this, a really excellent book is Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He is a psychologist and survived the concentration camps. And so he developed a therapy called logotherapy, which really means searching for meaning. And a really wonderful read. It's very thought-provoking and very profound. His main, one of the things he was looking at is why, when everybody's under the same circumstances, horrendous as they were in a concentration camp, why did some people live and other people died? And a lot of it is because they attach meaning to what they are doing on a daily basis, and that would be a spiritual element that is coming into their lives. In War Survivors, they've also done another experiment where they were asked to practice meditation. In other words, it was just repeating a mantra, okay, for 90 minutes a week. Okay, 90 minutes a week. And they did that for 5 weeks. At the end of 5 weeks, they had measurably reduced their symptoms of stress, anxiety, and anger, as well as improving their quality of life and their spiritual well-being. So we all know that suffering exists, but through spirituality and faith, it can be transformational and empowering. Because what we can learn through a hardship, if we are taking a faith or a spiritual aspect to our being here on this earth, is it helps us to produce perseverance, character, and ultimately hope as well. Brené Brown, one of my favorite authors, in her first book, I thought it was just me. She mentions that it is the relationship that women have with God their higher power or spiritual world that often serves as a source of resilience for them. In other words, the emotional resilience. It allows them to continue. And Sheryl Sandberg, in the book The Option B, which again is highly recommended, talks of a rabbi at their wedding saying to them, finding God or a higher power reminds us that we are not the center of the universe. So I really like that, because it shows us that actually what we need to embrace is humility, which is one of my favorite values. Okay, so that's the emotional side of spirituality. The physical sides are very much linked to the emotional side through a study of science called psychoneuroimmunology, where it has been shown that the thoughts that we have a physiological impact on our body due to the different chemicals that are released, whether we are in a positive emotions or negative emotions. And these neural pathways that are created, if we are permanently in an anxious state, then those neural pathways are very strong. But there's a thing called neuroplasticity, which allows our brain to form new pathways, and that's what spirituality can help us to do. So if we have healthy chemistry, in other words, as a result of healthy emotions, healthy feelings, our immune system is stronger, and there's a whole bunch of physical attributes that are improved just because we are thinking more positively. So things like meditation and yoga and silent prayer can help us to calm down, and therefore help all the chemicals that should be jumping around also to calm down. Okay, so we go from a very agitated state to a much calmer state. And it's been shown that if you do just 30 minutes of yoga daily, it will enhance your well-being, your mood, your immune system, your general health. The list is quite endless. So spirituality can affect us not only emotionally, but also physically. So there are a few things just to be aware of with spirituality. Very interesting survey was done by done on mental health professionals. 45% of them felt that religion could lead to mental health, okay, could lead to mental health. And 39% thought that religion could protect people from mental health. So it's very interesting that the 45% of the professionals felt that it could lead to mental health is higher than those that felt that it could help us to be protected from mental health. So I find that very, very interesting, especially because I do feel personally that in times of trial, having some kind of spirituality and faith really helps us a lot. And so drawing towards the end, there are a few disadvantages that I think that we must also just be aware of regarding religion and spirituality. The one is that a lot of resistance can come from other people if you are trying to convert them to your way of thinking because you think that it's the best way to be. There's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of conflict that can come as a result of forcing others to share your joy. What we need to know, or what we need to aspire to, is to accept that they are where they are, and that's okay, and I am where I am, and that's also okay. Secondly, some religions and spiritual practices are very prescriptive, and so they can be very limiting of your behavior. They can inhibit your thinking, and they can deny you some pleasurable activities that might bring a lot of fun and joy into your life. So also, some can be very detrimental to our well-being emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So I remind you, whether you are watching this live or whether you're watching the rebroadcast, to make some comments. What did you think? Were there certain things that you agreed with? Were there things that you're questioning? But what are your thoughts? I always welcome your comments hugely. If you've missed the previous videos on the mental, physical, and emotional aspects of being in balance and challenging yourself, please go and have a look in the video section on my Facebook page, or I would love you also to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just put in there Cherie Forsyth, CHERRIFORSYTH, and all the videos that I've done are available on YouTube as well. So I asked you to join me next month. The theme that I'm going to be talking about is I'm going to be shattering the silence surrounding the taboo subject of grief, particularly in today's current world, with lots of people very sadly losing their life due to the COVID-19 virus. I think it's particularly relevant. So join me on the difficult topic of grief, and as always, I thank you for watching me.